Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Smart Dumb Ph.D. podcast, the only podcast where I say that being smart and being dumb both are your competitive advantage. And that's why we look into the stories of people who have made it to places which once they thought might be difficult. And hence we decode their journeys and what smart moves and dumb moves they made in the process that landed them where they are. And today I'm excited, super excited to have Supreet with us, currently a senior AI solutions architect at Microsoft. And apart from that, she wears multiple hats, one being a woman tech makers ambassador at Google previously. She's also a AI leader in the women's space. And in addition, she's also been a technical reviewer. So if you go and look at her LinkedIn, you will find so many things that she has done. But what personally stands out for me is the fact that where she is right now is not something that happened over a day, over a week, or over a month, but has been a journey of almost a decade. And that's why we are here to decode that. So, welcome, Supreet. Thank you so much for making time for this. And so, we're going to start with the beginning of your journey, which starts from Delhi. So, Delhi to New York and into Microsoft. Can you start from where you were? And at that point, what is a dumb move you made that you didn't know would work out? And that turned out to be the smartest move. Supreet.
Thank you for having me. Hi everyone, I'm Supreet. So my journey began, I think, in 2013 when I enrolled in a bachelor's degree in mathematics from University of Delhi. So I was obviously, like many other kids, wanted to do engineering and, had this passion of cracking IIT. And obviously life had different plans. So I think that was like the major setback for me because I was always this kid, who topped schools and, was like the highest in the class. But that experience was pretty grounding for me. And I think that was the start of everything that began after that. I did my bachelor's and I knew that for me, being this, average kid on paper in India would limit options. And as we all know, that having a BTech versus having like a bachelor's degree in India, the options obviously vary and the job opportunities are limited for someone who might not have a technical degree. So that was basically like my tipping point to explore options outside India where I could thrive, which also meant taking like the biggest leap of faith. It's counterintuitive because I'm saying that I cannot shine in my own country, but I have faith that in some other country I will be able to shine, right? So it was pretty counterintuitive at that time. I was questioning myself. I started exploring options for Australia, Canada, United States, just comparing options of visa, job opportunities, and just talking to different people, getting insights on what their experience is. Very raw, unfiltered conversations that I think not many people talk about, like on the internet. And then finally decided to pursue my master's in data science in United States. Just at this was 2016, 17. And at that time, the boom of data science was in United States. And United States was much more ahead than any other country that I was looking at. So that seemed like the next obvious choice. Took the leap of faith, came here. And as the fate would have it, cracking internships and cracking jobs was super difficult. Just because I did not have any past experience. I was 21 when I came here. So obviously my emotional maturity was also all time low, along with, I would say, my mental maturity. So it was super hard. So I basically had to unlearn everything that I knew about like finding a job in India and like from scratch. And that's what I did. I got my first role at a very small company where I was doing data science consulting. And I just, that was like my starting point in the data science journey. And it fascinated me so much on how the real time data science projects actually worked. And then someone saw my work within the company and they asked me to join another company, which was ZS Associates. So a recruiter out of nowhere reaches out to me and says like, I think we are interested in you, just given your background. And I was like, okay, sure. I interviewed, got into ZS, and this was like 2020 pandemic. And then Morgan Stanley reached out, and like that was a mutual thing where I saw the position, and my manager at that time was ready to hop on a call on LinkedIn, and we just took it from there. I got the role at Morgan Stanley, and then Microsoft reached out, and this was 2024, and I joined Microsoft as an AI solutions architect. My career, all in all, has been in AI and data science, and right now it's about making all my banking customers successful, taking them from a proof of concept to production journey for their AI and machine learning workloads by sharing best practices, evangelizing the latest and greatest in this tech space, and as well as guiding them through best practices whenever needed. So
Thank
I
you.
think that was a
Yeah.
long intro.
Yeah, that's okay. But it you broke it down step by step, year by year,
Yeah,
and we're going to get into all that parts. But let's again go
sure.
back to where you started, right? You came to
Yeah.
this country when you were 21, right? And
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm sure that was a big cultural shift in
Mm-hmm.
the way you carried yourself back in India versus uh, the new ecosystem that you were in. So,
Yeah.
how did you adapt to that, being the 21 years naive you that you were? And what were the challenges? Like the first set of challenges that you thought, okay, this is what I need to overcome and quickly change myself.
Yes. I think the one thing, the way I've been raised by my parents has been, I always had a very adaptive mindset, like change for the better, right? Like that's kind of been my mantra. So
Mhm.
if you need to change and persist to be in a particular situation, I do that very quickly. And I didn't realize that, but like looking back, I feel like that was my biggest superpower was just to fit right in. And I don't mean it in a negative way because when I start talking, people are like, "Oh, so you mean like change yourself?" I'm like, "No, be grounded to your moral values, but at the same time, be open to what this country is about to offer you." Faith and family are the most important things that everyone should keep in mind wherever they are in their journey. And that basically helped me be grounded, but at the same time, open myself to the experience here, talking to the people, talking to the native people, the people who were actually raised here, born here. I used to do a lot of coffee chats. Like even within the university, I would just ask someone to like grab a bite or grab a coffee. And I noticed people were so open to it. Like unlike India,
Yeah,
people would be like, why?
right,
And
right.
here they were so open to it. So that was the beginning of my networking journey. Like I
Mhm.
always joke and say, like, I never applied for a job, and it's
Mhm.
true, because that experience basically taught me on just creating a network, not for a job,
Mhm.
but just having friends, having people to talk to,
Mhm.
and getting their perspective on things.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I just want to expand that on a little bit. And when you
Yeah.
said that you are very adaptive, the one thing that came to my mind is early adopter. I always felt when I was going through everything that you have been through on your LinkedIn profile, I felt like she is really an early adopter of things
Yeah.
and she's not
Yeah.
waiting, like she's catching the wave when it's high, right? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and one thing that you highlighted is talking to people, right? That's very intimidating to so many people, right? And
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
did you get past that, if you can break that down? Because the first time you talk and if things don't go the right way, some shrink and some want to try it once more, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you didn't shrink and there may be things that went wrong.
So I was saying there are three ingredients for success if you're planning to move to another country or maybe even another city, I would say. Persistence, hard work, courage. So when I started talking to people, I remember even like my accent would be funny at the
Yeah,
time that
right.
people would be like,
Yeah,
who is this person?
yeah,
I would often make grammatical errors because, UK English is very different from USA English. It's
yeah.
like those little things like the way I would eat versus I would see someone else eating would be very different. And I was like, do I even belong? Like I questioned myself multiple times. And
Mm-hmm.
even during the conversation, some people were very open to it, and I'm really thankful. But others, I felt that little bit of a judgment, from their side, even during our conversations. But I think one thing is that if you train your mind that there is something that I need to get, like I need to get a job, I need to, crack an internship. You will do it. And then even if it means like getting out of your comfort zone or getting rejected or getting ignored, it doesn't matter, right? Like you keep shining, you
Mm-hmm.
keep putting your best foot forward and keep showing up every day for what matters. It could be talking to people, it could be learning to code, it could be losing weight, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I believe that the first part that you mentioned, that you also took judgments, and
Yes.
might be it must have been a bit embarrassing but then
Of
that was the
course.
cost you were willing to pay for where you want to reach, right? So
Exactly.
that's where you're saying that train your mind constantly. And
Exactly.
when you're talking about training your mind, you are also
Yeah.
the recipient of EB1 visa, and that is
Mhm.
something given to people with extraordinary abilities. And now, if
Mhm.
we go back to the beginning of the podcast, where you mentioned that you were this average student in India, right? And from
Yeah.
being this average student to becoming this EB1 recipient, right? What does that mean for you? Because so many
Mhm.
people with the Ivy League stamp on their resumes, it's hard for them, right? And they don't know how to make it. So what does
Yeah.
that mean for you, Supreet?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good question. And I wrote like a LinkedIn post on the same thing because someone else asked me the other day, right? Like, you don't have any fancy titles on
Mm,
your resume, and yet you were able to make to Microsoft and, bigger companies and also get the visa.
mm,
And I think that kind of forced me to think that your beginnings don't define your end, right?
mm,
Just because you did not go to a fancy school or you couldn't crack that fancy job
mm,
on the first trial doesn't mean that you need to make that outcome define your life,
mm,
right? That it's just a blip in your entire journey,
mm,
right?
mm,
Like, think of it like a stock dipping down for like
mm,
a day or a month or a year, and
mm,
you can bring it back.
mm,
And that is the mindset that people need, that your
mm,
present doesn't define your future. And I
mm,
feel sometimes when we take failures too personally, which
mm,
I still take and I
mm,
also used to take, but I'm trying to get rid of it,
mm.
is we kind of get in our head and we label ourselves as a failure, as a loser. And once you have lost in mind, you have
Yeah,
lost in life.
right, right. Uh, I want to get back to that failure part. Like we always, this is something which will stay with us. If you do not perform on a project or any part of your life the way you
Yeah,
expected yourself to show up to, that voice is
yeah,
going to be there in your head, right? That you
right.
failed and all of that, right? But then, is it because it's is it louder for a woman versus a man in the workspace? What do you feel about that as well? If we can quickly cover that.
I definitely feel it is louder, and I'll give you an example. And my some of the managers that I work with at Microsoft are like super great, and I shared
Mm,
this incident with them
mm,
where if during like a customer conversation, I see like men making mistakes all the time,
mm,
and they'll just send a follow-up email saying, "Oh, I apologize, I made a mistake. This is the corrected
mm,
information."
mm.
And for me, I would scrutinize that. Oh my God, I made a mistake. I'll talk to my manager. I'll talk to, 500 other people. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
exaggerating. Like,
yeah,
I talk to mass amount of
yeah,
people, and then I
yeah,
think about it for days that, oh my God, how could I make a mistake? And what would the customer be thinking about me? They'll think that I'm a loser, right?
yeah.
Like all of those thoughts kind of go in my mind. And I'm like, that other person who is a man just
Mm,
moved on after like
mm,
a minute. And I'm dwelling on this
mm,
for hours and for days and letting it define
mm,
the future
mm,
outcomes,
mm,
right?
mm,
So I think that's one thing that I learned from Microsoft and my managers is growing, failing, making mistakes is part of your growth journey, right? So they
mm,
applaud growth mindset.
mm,
And
mm,
that comes with the cost that it's okay to make a mistake, but at
mm,
the same time, if you've like made a mistake, own it.
mm,
That is more important
mm,
rather than dwelling on it or like trying to cover up just
mm,
because you don't want to look bad,
mm,
right? Or it's against your brand. So
mm,
I think that is one thing. It's a very important skill to learn. I'm
mm,
still learning, but I feel I'm much better once
mm.
I'm at Microsoft than I was at other companies.
Mhm. Is it because also the culture there promotes that you do
Yes,
mistakes, but you move on fast, but you don't repeat the mistakes? But in other
exactly.
companies, maybe they're dwelling on the problem a lot more than they should. Is that the
I,
culture?
I think so, yes. And I think that's a culture shift where also, like, I have had managers when I used to make a mistake, they would make sure that that was added even in my performance review, right? Like, they
Mm,
would
mm, mm.
give me a hard time on like
Right,
my
right.
mistakes or, do name calling that you
Yeah,
are useless, whatever,
yeah,
all of those things.
yeah.
This is the first time that I've been in a company where they are like, it's okay, you made a mistake, own it,
Mm,
they applaud it, and they move on. And I
mm.
think that is why it's such a successful company,
Right.
with doing amazing in terms of revenue and
Mm,
just just the people
mm,
are so smart is
mm.
because of this mindset. They don't dwell on
Right.
the small things.
Yeah,
They care
yeah.
about the bigger things.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the shared goal that everyone is focused on. And
Exactly.
on that note, Supreet, the AI space is, I don't know, you are in that lane. This is not my lane. And hence, I want to ask you this that
Yeah.
AI space is a space. which is again dominated by men. Because if you talk about all the AI leaders, they are mostly men, right?
Men.
And again,
Mm-hmm.
you are a woman over there leading it from the front and being in the forefront of every change that is happening,
Yeah.
working at Microsoft. So, mm, how do you understand that? Like, what is your opinion over there? What is the percentage of women working in AI right now? I'm sure it's a lot more than
Yeah.
any other
Exactly.
sector, but still,
Yeah.
I'm sure the parity is not yet reached. What is your opinion there?
Yes. And just to answer your question, it will take a while for the parity to decrease. The
Yeah.
only reason being, like, this has been cultivated in our culture for a few years now. And I'm not just talking about like India versus US, like in
Mm,
general,
mm,
worldwide.
mm,
But I love how things are getting better. Like women like you and me, we are making changes, we are making strides
mm,
in this world.
mm,
I think at some point, and I have a very different perspective on this. I do promote, women in tech, and I promote by showing up, right? Like
mm.
that's my kind of
Yeah.
way of
Mm,
being there and inspiring other women.
mm,
If you look at my profile or if you look how I post, I don't really, promote like it as a woman in tech, but I
mm.
promote it indirectly by showing up,
Right.
right? So it's
Yeah.
it's not really tied to a movement or an agenda. It
Right.
is, I feel like, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So
Mm.
if you're
Yeah.
just there, right, like people will get inspired, and I get those messages from young girls that we look at you and we get really inspired.
Mm,
So that is, I think, one thing which
mm,
every woman, I think, should do. Just show
mm,
up
mm,
for what you believe. And if
mm,
you are at that privileged position, like I feel I am,
mm,
then, you are at a very, very, I would say, pinnacle point of
mm.
inspiring other women.
Absolutely.
Second is, I also feel like the world is changing, that we have many more allies
Mm,
than we did prior.
mm,
And I'll give you an example. Like these days, I'm in customer meetings and
mm,
there'll be like 25 men and I'll
mm,
be presenting. And
mm,
I forget
mm,
that is it a man versus a woman,
mm, mm.
right? Sometimes
Right.
because
Yeah.
I'm so like focused on,
The problem.
delivering
Yeah.
the problem, the
Yeah.
technology. Like that's what I'm really passionate about, that
Yeah.
I almost forget
Yeah.
what the gender of the person is,
Yeah.
right? So I do take it personally. I know I have a big responsibility to show
Mm,
up, as like as a certain member of the society. But at the same time, I also feel that it is important for women to, focus on the problem and just like solve and like show up and, let your success shout. Right.
right.
And
Right.
that's why I share
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, right? Because
Yeah.
that's one of the platforms where you can amplify your voice. So,
Yeah, yeah, that reminds me of my work at General Electric as well. So I was one of the women in the team. Like we had three
yeah,
women and 20 men in the team. And also during
yeah,
my PhD, I was the only woman, by the way, I'm the only woman who's worked on multi-axial fatigue throughout the world. Okay. So
good.
all the women listening, I think this is a story that's going to make them look for opportunities in cultures that help them grow and not shrink them. And on that note, we're going to circle back to your current position at
Yeah,
Microsoft. Okay. Uh,
yeah.
Now, the journey to this position has been through 14 rejections, a story that was published in Business Insider, right? Now, people are
Mm-hmm,
not open about the kind of rejections they go through, and
mm-hmm.
maybe at the fifth or sixth rejection, people are totally exhausted, right? Like, I don't know what's going on. So, how did you get past that? And 14, I'm glad that you shared that number because that might again inspire so many reading it that they shouldn't give up and keep moving. So, can you break that down?
Yeah. And fun fact, in my career of like 7 years, this is the least number of rejections that I've got. And I was glad that, someone, found this as an interesting story. Because
Yeah,
in my mind, when I
yeah,
was writing, when I was pitching this, and, I was talking to the editor, I was like, it's just 14 rejections. Do you think it's a big deal? And she's
yeah,
like, 14 rejections is a lot. And I'm like, okay, because so this should tell you the tenacity that I
yeah,
have developed and the thick
yeah,
skin
yeah,
from past 7 years. So
yeah.
when I started my career, I remember I applied to some 1,000 roles,
Hmm,
and spoke to some 200 people,
hmm,
and I got 3 interviews.
hmm.
That's it.
I'm
So that
noting
was
down
my
the
first.
numbers. I want to inspire my community, so I'm noting down the numbers. And I'm going to
Yeah, of
share an
course.
anecdote with you post this. But yes, please continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just had like 3 interviews from that. This
Hmm,
was my first job. I had 60 days left. Otherwise, I had to obviously leave the country. I had the
okay.
$60,000 loan that I had to pay. So a lot of pressure. So
Yeah.
out of these three, I had no other choice but to crack at least one interview. So there was no failing in interviews. Like that was not
Yeah.
even an option,
Yeah.
right? Like you had to be perfect to be
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So this was the kind of pressure that I have dealt with.
Hmm,
Now came in, like I tell you about the second, the third, the fourth role. I decided to change the way I was operating. I was like, okay, this is not sustainable,
mm,
right?
mm,
This
mm,
is not how I can operate, where I'm
mm,
applying for 1,000 roles. And I know people do it all the time, and it's been normalized that, okay, apply and get a job, but it doesn't work for me.
mm, mm,
My resume is trash, and it has been certified by recruiters from
mm,
all the big tech companies,
mm,
right? So I am not a good resume writer. I have
mm,
a lot to offer,
mm,
but apparently I cannot put it in words in a
mm.
resume,
The
right? So there is a
translation
problem.
is not happening in a way that they can see the value. Yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
they always tell me that, Supreet, we approach you through LinkedIn. We
Okay.
hired you because of your LinkedIn.
Yeah,
These are the
yeah,
comments that I am, told.
yeah.
So that is where I think kind of I know I'm digressing a little bit from your question, but I think that was like a tipping point for me, or like I
Mm,
would say a light bulb moment, that
mm.
how important is your digital brand
Right.
over, if you would not like to get rejections, or if you would at least like to get the interview calls, right? So
Mm, mm,
at this moment, when I got those 14 rejections, I felt so privileged. I was like,
mm.
I at least had 14 interviews. I've never had 14 interviews in my life,
Yeah,
right? Like that was a privilege for me. And I
yeah,
felt so special suddenly.
yeah.
So you see, like how my mind has taken rejection as like a redirection, and how I've
Right.
trained my mind. And
Yeah.
if this was Supreet who just came in the US and got 14 rejections in interviews, she
Mm,
would be questioning herself and thinking, she's the biggest loser. And
mm,
here I was celebrating it to like a publisher which has 1.5 million readers,
mm,
that
mm,
okay, I
mm,
got 14 rejections.
mm,
So
mm,
so
mm,
again,
mm.
it's obviously a minds again, it's the game of the mindset, it's the mindset shift. The way you train your body, that's the same way you need to train your brain if you
Yeah,
want to reach a certain position, or
yeah.
if you want to achieve something. And I know
Mm,
training brain is like the hardest thing you would ever do, but
mm.
also it's the most rewarding experience ever.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you digressed a bit into how the recruiters reached you out, which is about
Yeah,
you getting active on LinkedIn and sharing your story. Now,
yeah,
maybe that was the starting point of things not working out. And I
correct.
believe, again, that was a smart, dumb move. Smart because you didn't know how it would pan out, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
the dumb you working, making it work, right? You don't know if this would work out, but then you had that
Correct.
courage. That's where you need to get a little dumb, right? Now, you
Exactly.
have been continuing that journey, right, Supreet?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
continuing the digital brand that you are building, and you also
yeah.
got the LinkedIn top voice. Okay, so how is it working for you apart from the fact that it help you land interviews? How are the other ways that you are amplifying your brand and also getting opportunities that other people may not be able to land because they are just not showing up for the work they do, or they are not prepared to show up, or whatever is the reason?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good question. And I know you alluded to it in the start, is like about my extraordinary visa.
Yeah.
The extraordinary visa is owed to my LinkedIn journey. So in terms of extraordinary visa, and I'll give a quick 30-second. I'm not a lawyer, but just so that everyone knows that there are certain criteria that you need to fulfill to be able to
Mm,
get that visa. Some of
mm,
the criteria include being featured on a major media outlet,
mm,
your work having an original contribution, like a
mm,
patent,
mm,
having authored a few articles,
mm,
and if you see like, and there are obviously multiple other kind of criteria, but when you look at those criteria and you go to the website, you see all of these are things that a person who is either has a strong digital brand or is a strong leader will
mm,
get organically.
mm,
Right.
mm,
So I
mm,
was like, okay, let's approach this in
mm,
that way. Right. If you
mm,
are extraordinary
mm,
and if you are showing up on a digital brand, you
mm,
shouldn't even be chasing these opportunities.
mm,
People
mm,
should be coming to you
mm,
for
mm,
this.
mm,
So
mm,
I like people when they look at that EB1A visa, they start saying, oh, first criteria, let me tick this. Second
mm,
criteria, let me fulfill this. I
mm,
took a very different approach. I
mm,
was like, let me build a brand, and this visa could
mm,
be an outcome
mm,
of
mm,
that brand.
mm,
I wouldn't build a brand,
mm,
just because, okay, that's all, that, I should just get a visa. And
mm,
that made that journey so enjoyable, so inspiring, so rewarding. It took
mm,
me 2.5 years, by the way,
mm.
right? So it
Yeah,
took me a
yeah,
long
right.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
But the 2.5 years, I was able to do technical reviews. I was able to author articles. I was able to review the books. I was
Mm,
able to get on the major media outlets. I was able to increase my salary, which is
mm,
another criteria. I
mm,
was able to get a leading role, which is
mm,
another criteria.
mm,
So
mm,
all of these benefits came
mm,
from just me focusing on this one thing
mm.
of building a digital brand.
Brand. Yes.
So, you see how the rewards are basically, I know the hard work that goes in, but
Yeah,
rewards obviously exceed the
yeah,
work that
yeah.
goes in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe the rewards compound and they keep
Yeah.
compounding over time because
Exactly. Yeah.
your digital brand actually has a lot to offer. Over the years, that offering will actually
Exactly.
amplify
Mhm.
more. And so I wanted to come back to your customers. Okay, how is this digital brand that you're building is helping the customers to feel, more trusted, like trust you more?
Yeah.
Is there anything
Yeah.
that's happening in that front as well?
For sure, right? And I would say it's both internal and external customers, right?
Mm,
And how I would position it at when I was at a big bank like Morgan Stanley, right? Like there are
mm,
thousands of people. There is
mm,
no way that people will know you, right?
mm,
I
mm,
mean, most projects don't really cut a
mm,
global viewpoint. Like they're
mm,
limited to either a certain business unit or a
mm,
certain technology.
mm,
And I remember getting like multiple DMs
mm,
on my internal teams saying, or like Slack, saying, Supreet, we have seen you on LinkedIn
mm,
and, we would love to connect.
mm,
And I had this wide network of people at
mm,
Morgan Stanley, which was
mm,
outside my current team, right? So instead of knowing 60 people, I knew 600
mm,
because of having a digital brand.
mm,
So that helped me attract opportunities even within the company. Like I actually interviewed
mm,
within the company for different roles. They would invite me for speaking, right?
mm,
Like to their teams. And it was a very rewarding journey. Like I was someone in
mm,
this big company.
mm,
So it helped me with my internal customers or internal, I would say, just colleagues.
mm,
And second, when I talk about the external customers, usually when I go for an introduction, or you go to any forum, right? Or you meet someone. After that, you give them some kind of a contact, right?
mm,
People used to give them business cards. I would give them my LinkedIn.
mm,
Now,
mm,
obviously, once they have met you and they
mm,
see your brand online,
mm,
it's psychology. They
mm,
are going to look at your brand and be like,
mm.
oh man, like, she's very active.
Yeah,
And on the second meeting, they would be like, oh, Supreet, like, we saw your LinkedIn, man.
yeah,
Amazing. Like,
yeah,
we loved it.
yeah,
So you see how that trust factor was
yeah.
established
This,
even before you
yeah,
actually did something for them.
right. Yeah, yeah.
That is the power of a
Yeah.
digital brand.
Yeah, it instantly elevates, and also the impression that's formed is like, in a minute, oh, okay, I'm talking to this person who is like aware of all
Yes.
this stuff and all of
Yeah.
that. So they also, I think, brace up to be like your brand. I guess they also want to
Yeah.
behave like, they see you as an authority instantly, and they also want to behave like that. mm, on that note, we are going to take a U-turn now and come back to some AI questions, Supreet. Okay.
Sure.
This report of Microsoft, okay, because we were talking about
Sure.
AI, which says that the jobs that would be hardest to replace for AI would be labor intensive ones like the nursing, assistants, and construction workers. And so there's a lot of information that's traveling around in the
Yeah.
internet about. I see two school of thoughts. That one says that it's going to make more opportunities, and the
Yeah.
other says that it's a AI bubble. So, what is your opinion on all of this? So, there are obviously some downsides and upsides, but how do you see it, Supreet?
So I don't know about the transformation of jobs, right? And I'll be honest with you because I think
Yeah,
this podcast will become redundant within 6 months if I talk, if I give my viewpoint.
yeah.
But I have
Happy
a
to cover that.
viewpoint,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
I do have a different viewpoint on how
yeah.
I see this going. I say that focus on, and this is not my original viewpoint. I read something similar, and I honestly, and please don't, I don't know the source, but I quote, I really feel about this is either you should be building AI or you should be selling AI.
Mm,
Those are the only two roles that
mm,
might
mm, mm,
thrive in the coming future, right?
mm, mm,
AI can't sell for itself, right?
mm,
So salespeople, roles like solutions architect, technical account managers,
mm,
customer success account managers, all of these roles I think will shine for a
mm,
while
mm,
until we are at the phase of like making AI perfect and building it and making it perfect for enterprises,
mm,
right?
mm,
Second, either you should be building AI, and by building AI, I don't just mean like building like models, right?
mm,
Like obviously large language models. Even if you're building a product that
mm,
has value that can solve a business problem, which is
mm,
LLM induced or small language model induced, it doesn't matter. You will shine. So
mm,
what I say is forget about all the fear mongering to
mm,
people.
mm,
Focus on either of these two things, depending on your skill set and depending on your life goals,
mm.
and you will be fine at least for the short term.
Okay, okay, great. I agree to that. Build and sell, these are two important skills in addition to the AI skills moving forward. Uh,
Yeah,
because it's PhDs that I work with. Okay, now say there's a PhD who is has a PhD in theoretical computer science, right?
sure.
Now, what do you think are the things, because they have the capabilities and the foundation and the deep understanding of how everything works? What do you think are the things that they need to build up, say in the next 3, 4 months, to apply to companies like Microsoft? And I also wanted to cover that how important is your LinkedIn, because the PhDs generally don't work on their LinkedIn and they think that maybe it's not that important. So I wanted to cover how important is that for FANG set of companies.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, first of all, as a PhD, I think you know your subject best, right? You know the problems, you
Yeah.
know the opportunities, you know the challenges. So, what I always advise people, not only to the PhDs, but any line of work that you're in,
Mm,
understand the technology, right? Understand what AI is. And I don't mean understand like the math behind it or,
mm,
go to the algorithms. You can do that. But first, start understanding the fundamentals, right?
mm,
When by fundamentals, just like start by what is Gen AI, right? Like
mm.
as simple as that.
Yeah.
Start understanding that, get used to the technology,
Mm,
and whichever line of work you are working in, I'm sure even in physics, you might have like subparts or submodules to the subject.
mm,
See, like, even sit with like a tool like ChatGPT and
mm,
see, like, okay, would be the impact of AI on this particular subject?
mm,
You know the subject, and now
mm,
you have basic knowledge of AI. Even when you'll be chatting with ChatGPT or like any other tool, you can
mm,
make sense of
mm,
what comes out of that result.
mm,
And it might ignite ideas. It wouldn't give, might not give you the exact idea, but it might
mm,
ignite ideas. Oh, I
mm,
did not think this way. Oh, maybe AI can impact that way.
mm,
AI could impact that way. Once you have figured that out, then see what roles complement,
mm,
what you would actually like to achieve,
mm,
right? Once you have that,
mm,
then you search for companies like,
mm,
okay, whichever, kind of be best at, like either it's Microsoft, Amazon, Google, wherever you might fit.
mm.
Now, there are two ways of approaching companies, right? And I always tell people, please don't do random messaging. Don't,
Yeah.
like, people reach out to me and they're like, we are interested in software developer position at Microsoft. Can you tell us what the interview process looks like? How am I supposed to know?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
look at so once you have figured out the titles, you
Mm,
should reach out to the relevant people with the same titles.
right.
60 to 70% people put the exact same title that they
Right.
have.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, some people might put in a different way, and then you have no way of knowing if it's the same title. But even if your search is limited to that, those are the people that you should be either be following,
Mm,
connecting, building
mm,
relationships with.
mm,
You can do cold DMing to
mm,
them, see
mm,
if they're open to a coffee chat, or
mm,
at least just following them and seeing. Sometimes people repost the positions within their team.
mm, mm,
Sometimes they're even hiring,
mm,
right? So just having them in your LinkedIn feed
mm,
will be helpful for you to
mm,
attract the
mm,
opportunities you would like to attract.
mm,
That's one way if you're
mm,
not active on LinkedIn.
mm.
Second is obviously you build the brand around the role that you would like to target,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like for an AI solutions architect, since we interact with a lot of customers, the thought leadership is a part of the role. You
Mm,
get paid to do thought leadership. I mean,
mm,
obviously,
mm,
you would
mm,
get paid to write LinkedIn posts, but you get paid to write company, the part of your job description is write company blogs, go to
mm.
forums, talk in the conferences. That's
Right.
part of it because that's how
Mm,
you
mm,
show your technical expertise on a
mm,
larger scale.
mm.
So for a role like that, having a LinkedIn, I don't think it's like a nice to have. I think it's a must have. Right now,
Right.
for your role, it might not be that case,
Mm,
but
mm,
you can amplify your performance by just writing about either the impact of AI on that post, sharing your journey, just talking even about your subject. Right? People want to hear stories, not technology as
mm,
much on
mm,
LinkedIn.
mm,
That's what
mm,
I've
mm,
noticed.
mm, mm,
So pick your path and
mm,
then start writing.
mm,
You will develop a following
mm.
by this just by sharing your story, right?
Yeah.
That is how you'll build a mass following.
Yeah.
You will build a small network of
Mm,
people who are actually interested in your work by
mm,
sharing your expertise on the topic. So
mm.
that's why it has to be a combination of both. It cannot be one versus the other when you
Right.
start writing your LinkedIn post.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
pause there. I know I covered a lot. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want you to now explain to me, layman, that what is your role and how it's solving problem for your customers. So how does a day in your life look like, and how will it keep evolving with the changes in the AI that's happening at a pace which is so unprecedented? How will it keep evolving? I
Yes,
know
that's a
it
good
may not be
question.
predictable, but then
Yeah.
whatever you can see right now, yeah.
Yes, for sure. So, in a layman, think of my role as someone who is customer obsessed and
Mhm.
responsible for the success of customer in their AI journey
Mhm.
as they are part of the Microsoft Azure ecosystem. So
Mhm.
once they have been onboarded, my kind of role starts in I doing some kind of ideation with them on what the art of possible could look like, what the
Mhm.
use cases would look like.
Mhm.
Once we have determined those use cases, and I work closely with the account team, so I'm tied to the entire, it's a sales and post-sales cycle. Once we have identified the use cases, I would start building some proof of concepts for them or work with my account team to show them the art of possible on that particular use cases. And on the side, I work with them on enabling the right tools and technologies, obviously
Mhm.
within the Microsoft ecosystem, so they can be successful in their
Mhm.
journey.
Mhm.
So those two things we do at a parallel track. Once they're convinced that this is how they would like to build, and we have enabled the technology, I basically guide them through. I guide their developers to a journey where I teach them, quote unquote, on what the technology is, how it looks like. So I basically hold those training sessions per se, and then guide them as and when they are hitting into either roadblocks or they have questions on the journey from proof of concept to production level
Mhm.
process, share best
Mhm.
practices from other customers. I'm basically tied to hip
Mhm.
with the customer from proof of concept to production
Mhm.
journey. So
Mhm.
I would say it's a mix of a hands-on role where obviously you're building proof of concepts, prototypes. So you have knowledge, but at the same time, you also have technical knowledge because now you are helping the customer move to production.
Yeah.
And there is a strong aspect of technical communication here because you are talking to CXOs, you're talking to people high up in the food chain who
Mhm.
don't have time, and it's
Mhm.
very hard to grab their attention.
Mhm.
So you need
Mhm.
to be very crisp in
Mhm.
what you are saying, and you need to influence them so
Mhm.
that they can influence their team and the
Mhm.
entire, kind of org is with
Mhm.
you. I mean,
Mhm.
that's our goal, right? To have a ripple effect and
Mhm.
have as many projects and as many use cases
Mhm.
within a particular bank
Mhm.
or like a financial firm in
Mhm.
my case.
Mm-hmm. That seems like a very, very holistic kind of a role. And by holistic, I mean you have the technical skills that you have to have. In
Yeah,
addition, you need to have the influencing skills that
correct,
you need with the clients, right? And if you falter
correct.
in anyone, it might not help you the way you are wanting to grow in your
Exactly.
career.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that one of the
Mhm.
reasons, Supreet, that you moved into the senior role within a year of joining Microsoft? Would you say
Yes,
that's something that happened quite fast, or it's the average time, or it's actually faster for you? How is it?
that is a good story. So how my manager tells me is that I'm like one of the rare gems who got
Yeah.
promoted in 1 year at Microsoft. So
Oh.
I don't know if he's too kind, but I would love to believe that that's true. Where obviously getting promoted within a year is extremely difficult, but
Mm,
I feel like as they say that if you wake up every day and you're very excited to do something, which is
mm,
by the way a prereq for this role, because
mm,
as I'll allude to your previous point where AI is fast changing. So you need to be able to give up your weekends or
mm,
even
mm,
like late evenings just to study and
mm,
like get
mm,
used to this new technology. So I am like that person who's very obsessed with
mm,
this
mm,
technology. And at the
mm,
same time, I love solving customer problems, right?
mm, mm,
So I think until now, I was a fish who was trying to climb the tree and I was failing again and again. And
yeah,
now I'm this fish who's actually swimming in water. And
yeah,
that's why I find it challenging. I mean, obviously, it's intellectually challenging to me, but
yeah,
I feel like comforting. Like, okay,
mm,
this is what I was born to do.
mm,
Right. Finally, I know that, okay, this is the role
mm,
most probably I will retire at.
mm,
Right.
mm,
Like, or
mm,
similar role. Like, I
mm,
feel this is my calling.
mm,
So, which I know is a very rare, again, offering,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
feel just because of the leap of faith I took and the wrong decisions and the right decisions I took in my journey
yeah.
kind of led me to this point.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of iterations that you have been through that helped
Yes.
you
Yes.
discover this. And
Yes.
one point that you touched while you were talking about this is you throw yourself at work because you love it so much, which means
Exactly.
the common argument about work-life balance. Okay, what is your opinion on that? For me, it's like if you love something, throw yourself at it, and if your family demands, then throw yourself at it, but don't count the number of hours. So, what's your opinion there? Like you said, you're working on weekends also, but I know that's not the case every time, right? But when it's required,
Exactly.
it's required. Yeah,
Yes, and again, like this is not an expectation, right? From a firm standpoint that I need to
yeah,
work on weekends.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
choice that I make
Choice.
because I want to put in those extra hours
Mm,
of just solving and building new things and learning because during the week it's very busy and you're too distracted and doing 10 things that you can't really do focus work
mm,
possibly. So it's just again. I would say that coming back to your point of work-life balance, I don't think that exists. I'm very similar to what you said. I feel it is work and life, and they kind of go together. And
Right.
whatever needs you at the time should be
Yeah.
prioritized. And I'll
Yeah.
give you an example in my life. Obviously, I don't have kids, so
Yeah.
this might not apply to everyone. But
Yeah.
like I'm married, right? So for me, if like I want to spend more time with my husband, or I want to spend more time with my family, or I would like to, attend a friend's birthday or like something, obviously I would not work that weekend and I would deprioritize my learning of AI
Mm.
over being in a social setting, right? And that is just me, right? And I feel like that is how things work.
Mm.
But at the same time, I'm a big promoter. Please take care of your health. I never, like, it's a rule, I never work post 9:30 p.m. I do
Mm.
hit bed at 9:30 p.m.
Mm.
Even if there's a customer escalation, I will try to make sure that I take it like maybe early morning next day, but please hit the bed on time, sleep on time, eat well.
Mm.
And that is what would matter the most.
Mm.
A healthy mind resides in a healthy body, and I've seen it
Mm.
for myself.
Mm.
So it is very important for
Mm.
you to have a healthy body.
And now I want to ask you, like, why did you pick up your public speaking skills? Again, I keep telling that you are an early adopter, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been working on your public speaking skills from the early days of your career, and that landed
Right.
you into too many opportunities. And so, in your opinion, why is that so important? Like, be it any
Mhm.
career, how that helps you in your career?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And I think it's a very important point as well, because I always see, software developers or people who are quote unquote pretty technical, like machine learning engineers, coming to me
Mm.
and being okay with not having strong communication skills.
Mm.
But it comes to the the previous point that I mentioned. If you're not able to sell the
Mm.
work that you are
Mm.
doing, it
Mm.
doesn't even have to be with external customers. You are selling every day. You are selling to your manager, you are selling to your colleagues.
Mm.
If you're not able to do that successfully,
Mm.
how do you plan to shine in a
Mm.
firm? If
Mm.
you see within an organization, it's
Mm.
not the smartest people that
Mm.
get promoted. It's the
Mm.
one that sold themselves well,
Mm.
that can
Mm.
sell themselves, that can sell their work,
Mm.
right? So it is such a pivotal skill to have. So if
Mm.
you don't have it, obviously, like always say that it is something that I think I was born with, because my mother tells me stories where even as a 1 year old, I would stand in front of mirror and mic and start talking.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
I think public speaking has always been my calling. I think I was 5 or 6 when I was speaking in front of 10,000 people, and I didn't even care. Right.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
it
Mm.
was like I never had that what people
Fear.
call like stage of, yeah, fear,
Yeah.
the fear of stage and everything. So I feel like this is something that I was born with,
Yeah.
right? A
Yeah.
trait. But what I did have to do is change my style over
Mm.
time and
Mm.
be adaptable again to the
Mm.
persona of people that I'm talking to. Obviously, if I'm talking to CXOs, I won't be talking the way I'm talking to you,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It might be
Yeah.
more formal, the tone might be different,
Mm.
and just depending on the attention span, I might change, things
Yes.
here and there. If I'm
Yes.
talking to a developer, it'll be very tech focused, right? So that tailoring part is what I had to learn over
Mm.
time. And
Mm.
that obviously comes from iterations,
Mm.
watching people
Mm.
deliver sessions, the people that you love their style, you adopt their style. So it's a combination of that. And if
Mm.
you don't have the skills, I'm sure like there are, million courses out there, million YouTube videos, Spotify, podcasts on public speaking and technical communication. So I would
Right.
definitely say work on that, because this is a skill that will help you grow in your career. Otherwise, you will hit a ceiling at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that makes me focus on one thing because you talk to so many people, the spectrum of the people being very different from being
Yeah,
people working under you or being supervised by you to CXOs, right? The spectrum is quite
right.
wide. So,
Yeah.
how important is empathy in that case, Supreet?
That's a very good question. And for me, early in my career, I realized that empathy is a superpower. So if
Mhm.
you have that, you
Mhm.
will be able to adjust. Again, adaptability and empathy
Mhm.
is very important. I feel
Mhm.
they kind of go hand in hand.
Mhm.
The empathy portion, some people are obviously, naturally natural empaths, right? Some people are not. But it is super critical for you to be relatable to a wider audience,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that wider audience can be your LinkedIn audience. It can
Mhm.
be your audience within the internal and external customers, as I say.
Mhm.
Um, so channelize your inner empathy. But more than that, I feel everyone is born with a superpower. So let's say empathy is not your superpower, but
Mhm.
your superpower might be asking a lot of questions to
Mhm.
get to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You're not scared to raise your hand in a room full of like 70 people, then
Yes.
that's your superpower. Then channelize that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even if you, let's say, are not an empath or not a public speaker or lack all of these basic skills that some people do, which is okay, channelize your superpower. So make sure that you understand what your superpower is so that you can bring that best self to work, right? And on everything that you do. So that's very important. I know kind of derailed a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that people know that, okay, empathy is good, but then at the same time, it's important to channelize your inner superpower.
Okay. Coming back to a question that I thought I would ask, but I had forgotten from your previous answer, where you were saying that something about upskilling, right, Supreet?
Yeah.
The pace at which AI is evolving, you definitely need to be upskilling. So, what is the
Correct.
amount of time that you devote each week or each month to ensure that you are aware of what's happening in your space? Like, do you study something? Do you go through books? Do you go through podcasts? What's your source of keeping yourself updated at the quickest possible time? In the quickest possible time. Yeah.
Yeah, so every day I at least dedicate an hour to upskilling. And that hour could look like going for like a 30-minute power walk with a
Hmm,
podcast.
hmm,
With my morning coffee, I usually read an AI book,
hmm,
right, which is like, at least even 5 or 6 pages of an AI book. So I would
hmm,
just read it and,
hmm,
kind of try to grasp the concepts.
hmm,
Then if I have time in the evening, I would, build something, right? Like,
hmm,
let's say if I'm even building like a prototype for a customer, I would
hmm,
think about, okay, how can I take this one step further, right? Like, and add something, like an extra flavor
hmm,
to this. So
hmm,
I would say more than an hour, but at least an hour every day. And on weekends, it's usually 4 to 5 hours that I
hmm, hmm,
spend on
hmm.
reading, building, upskilling myself. If again, I am not on a social setting,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing most
Yeah.
weekends.
Okay. That's quite a lot, 4 hours plus 1 hour per day, right? That's
Yes.
like showing, I think somewhere it's also showing your time management skills that you're really good with it, because scooping out that much amount of time from your schedule is not an easy task until you know where your time goes in, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and Sudhir, I have two final questions. Okay. If there's anyone who is trying to break into companies like FANG with opportunities in AI, what is your uh, three big advice to them?
So I mean, obviously there are multiple ways that we discussed on how you could crack, but three advice would be: one, build if you can. So if you can build GitHub repos, even if you're
Hmm,
doing vibe code, it's
hmm,
fine.
hmm,
Just
hmm,
build something and try to understand the technology by building.
hmm,
Second, if you're already working within a company, try to find stretch projects that touch AI. That's what
hmm,
I did,
hmm,
because companies care more about the experience than the
hmm,
degrees.
hmm,
So
hmm,
showcase that experience is very important. Third, volunteer if you can.
hmm,
Volunteer, build AI projects maybe for a non-profit or a non-government organization, because
hmm,
that will also be very close to what the real projects would look like. So everything is around building, but this is how your profile can stand out
hmm,
from the rest of the people. And
hmm,
or at least these are three things that I did, which
hmm,
helped my profile to stand
hmm,
out. And I
hmm.
got calls from different fans.
I see that you have a lot of superpowers, okay? But what is your one fear, Supreet? One fear.
I still have fear of failing,
Okay.
and and my mom always like jokes, and I joke with my mom like, oh, what if I go homeless, right? Which is, I know, a very extreme
Yeah,
situation, but
yeah,
like I still have that fear. And now with like personal brand, it comes. There's obviously a greater responsibility. People are watching at you like a hawk,
yeah.
and some people might be like waiting, oh, for you
For
to
you to
fail
fail.
as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that is, I mean, that is something I obviously constantly think about. I'm trying to get over it, and I know that I'm at a much better spot than I was like 8 years back when I started my career. But I
Right.
feel like that fear, it'll still take a while for me to get over that completely.
Yeah, I believe like as we grow, we also have some newer things coming our way that requires us to adapt it and grow through it. So I believe,
Yeah.
I'm sure 8 years down the line, the kind of challenge that you're going to encounter or you're working on will be very different from the one that you're trying to grow through
Yes.
right now. Awesome, Supreet. I think people will have many takeaways from this podcast. And one takeaway for me for sure is, though I keep hearing about it, but this was a reminder that you again reminded me, was build with AI and scale with AI and start selling with AI. Okay. So that's one thing I'll have to think about. Of course, I'm doing certain things and believe, as you say, train your mind and think that you can make it. So thank you, Supreet. It was such an honor having you. And learning from your journey. Thank you, Supreet.
Yeah, thank you so much.